primary goal of education, the modern education, is to condition individuals into becoming productive and efficient components of a bureaucratic machine.
We
This
have,
concept of kala and grays,
yeah, we call
the
them coconuts, brown from the inside, white from the inside.
inclined toward accumulating more and more wealth, and this creates this problem of takasur, that is strictly condemned in Surah Takasur in Quran.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Nahmadu wa nusalli ala Rasulil Kareem. Amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. Today we have a podcast with Dr. Omar Javaid. This is our second or third podcast with him. Um, Dr. Omar Javaid is a leading scholar based in Karachi. His focus in basically post-colonial socioeconomic political systems, and his focus has been mostly economic and social systems, as well as post-colonial education system and the impact colonialism had on Islamic education models. He's a thought leader. Um, very few people in the world who are working on the concepts and the models that he's working on them. He's probably, no exaggeration, he's probably the top five, if not the top three, in the field that he is in. So we're very, very happy that he's here. On another note, he has a book coming up. He's written a book, and that is coming up. Let me read the title of the book. Um, it's called Socioeconomic Sustainability Through Moral and Social Capitalism, A Tale of Three Enterprising Communities. It's coming up in October. And inshallah, when that comes out, we will leave a link of that somewhere in this podcast on the YouTube link so you guys could go and check that out. Um, so Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Umar. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me again. I just wanted to make a little correction um, in the title that you said, because it's a long title and you can I myself sometimes get uh, confused what exactly. For example, recently somebody asked that what was the title of my thesis, and I was like, well, let me let me try to recall. It took me a while to do that. The title of the book is Socioeconomic Sustainability Through Moral and Social Capital. You probably, without realizing, mentioned capitalism instead of capital. Uh,
I read it
yeah,
and I read it wrong, huh?
yeah.
That's
So
another impact of capitalism.
yeah, exactly. It's so much at the back of our mind. This is what we need to um, uncondition ourselves to. It's so much
We have to
our minds
unthink
are
that.
structured.
Yeah.
Thought process. Yeah.
Yes. So
It's become part of our subconscious.
well, thank you so much for joining today. All right. So
Yeah.
today we want to talk about
Happy to be here.
education. So I think we should first talk about the problems we have before we start talking about the solution and what the impact of colonialism has on
Yeah.
indigenous education in our context. That would be Islamic education.
Yeah. So it's a very long, of course, topic, and let's see how much we can unpack in this conversation. Um, Typically, if you look at from a uh, from the surface, uh, the primary goal of education, the modern education, is to condition individuals into becoming productive and efficient components of a bureaucratic machine. And this bureaucratic machine literally exists in almost every institutional uh, system that is out there, from the corporate entities to the public state-owned or the typical state institutions that we have. So the bureaucratic logic is everywhere, in the private sector and the public sector. And the primary aim of the education system that we have right now is to condition and filter out those individuals who are capable of being transformed into the kind of personality that is uh, that can actually be efficient and productive inside a typical bureaucratic environment. So those individuals who are not capable of, fitting into that environment are literally filtered out, and they're literally labeled as failures, and people are unable to. But those individuals who have this typical uh, uh, way of being that is very rational, that is very left brain oriented, that is very procedural. I mean, they can focus on processes instead of outcomes without questioning the moral significance of what they are doing, without looking at the bigger picture of what is happening. I mean, this kind of a mindset. So these individuals are conditioned and further um their capacities are improved in this sense, and subsequently they are uh, prepared for their roles in the bureaucratic institutional environment. So that is the primary agenda, and in fact, wherever this institutional model of education has emerged in history, I was reading this book by Francis Fukuyama, um, The Origin of the Political Order, if I remember the name correctly. And he
Correct. Yeah.
was talking about the history of institutions, history of bureaucracy in particular. And he even noticed that the first time bureaucracies emerged in China like 2000 years ago. And even in Chinese society, they had to create an educational system that could prepare individuals to fit into that bureaucratic environment.
Mm.
What here, what I think we need to fundamentally, highlight a few characteristics of this bureaucratic institutional environment to make it clear why it require a separate institution to prepare individuals to go and work for these bureaucracies.
Or the
So what
factories,
happens?
or the industrial era.
Yeah, exactly. There is something typical about that environment. And that particular feature of those institutional environment is that you have to operate without getting emotionally and morally involved in whatever is happening.
Mm.
All right. So you need to be completely emotionally sterile. You should literally think and act like a machine. Your only commitment is with your whatever instructions coming from your boss without questioning you why this needs to be done, whether you are emotionally okay with emotionally or intuitively okay with whatever instruction is being given to you. And you also cannot bring in your what do you call your uh, uh, tribal commitments. For example, the family, for example, people have this natural tendency to make tribes, make
Mm.
groups of make connect with people emotionally. For example, you might want to make a few friends in your workplace, of course, and you will become a bit more closer
Mm.
to them. And this is typical human psyche. Um, So what happens when you are emotionally connected with a few individuals? It is possible that you might become biased in their favor when it comes to, for example, if I'm a teacher, I should be completely emotionally disconnected from all the students inside the classroom. What happens because if I become emotionally connected because with some students, then subsequently I might become biased and start giving them some favors or whatever. This might look like a good thing in some aspect, and sometimes it is required also. But this is a typical uh, characteristic of the bureaucratic environment, and it is so much prevalent all over the place that wherever there is a need to become emotionally concerned or morally concerned about some anything going on, then again you are not allowed to bring in your emotions and moral instinct into the equation, and rather you have to look at the problem in a purely rational manner. And subsequently this creates a very unbalanced kind of a society at the end of the day. So education system primarily try to create this kind of an individual who is completely rational and procedural in his thinking. He does
Mm.
not look at the bigger picture, does not look at why something is being done. He just look at the problem that needs to be solved. He does not question why the problem needs to be solved.
So
So
again, yeah, one of the
yeah,
unfortunate part of that is, as we're talking about it, education itself has become a bureaucracy. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, of course, it has to model the same format because
right, right.
it is basically creating the individuals for to work in bureaucracies to become part of the productive and efficient members of bureaucracy, of course.
Hmm.
So it has to replicate the same factory-based, bureaucratic environment where
Absolutely.
individuals are conditioned to, work in that area, work in that particular manner. So that is what is the fundamentally the problem with it. So it kind of, I mean, human beings are not just rational beings. We are emotional, we are moral, we have lots of other
Spiritual and
instincts.
spiritual.
Spiritual also, absolutely. So we also have a rational side, of course. All of these aspects of our being has their own significance. So what happens that when you go and spend years and years in an educational, modern educational environment, then subsequently only your rational side is nurtured and all of your other faculties are suppressed. So in a
So
way,
I
you become amputee. You become an amputee in a way. You're not physically amputated, but you are psychologically
intellectually,
amputated.
intellectually.
You are intellectually amputated. You are spiritually amputated. For example, if I bring in the perspective of Ian McGilchrist, he's a neuroscientist and a philosopher. He has written lots of material about how the two hemispheres of our brain actually functions, and he argues that the whole civilization that has actually come out from the West, from the institutions, from the education system, and all its components, basically engages and nurtures the left side of the brain. And the left side of the brain has the capacity to act like a typical bureaucratic manager. The right side of the brain has other characteristics like creativity and moral instinct and emotional intelligence, and all of these things are actually there on the right side. The left side is very much task oriented. It focuses on parts. It does not focus on the bigger picture, etc. So the education environment only nurtures the left side of the brain, if I bring in that perspective. So in a way, you are amputated. The part of your brain is nurtured, another part of your brain is completely ignored, as if it does not even exist. Not just the brain, but your entire personality. For example, if a child uh, wants to go to a toilet, uh, there is a class going on, and it is like, I want to go to the washroom, and typically the teacher would say, wait for the break, just sit down and wait for the break. So what you are actually being conditioned, you're supposed to even ignore your physical
Your
primary
natural needs.
instinct,
Your
your
natural needs.
natural needs also. You even need permission to drink water inside a classroom.
So I think
Right.
like it's a very interesting point that you bring. This is something sort of being a prisoner.
Yeah, exactly.
It is,
So
like when you're in
all
the
of
prison, like, yeah.
yeah, the prison, the bureaucracy, the educational environment, the typical industry, all of them share very similar characteristics. You have to, but in fact, these environments are like machines, and every individual who is working inside these environment also has to transform himself into a machine.
Hmm.
Devoid of any emotion, devoid of any emotional instinct, devoid of any spirituality, devoid of any intuition, devoid of any creativity. So all of those human elements that actually makes you human are supposed to be ignored, and uh, you are supposed to work like a typical machine that does not have any of these instincts.
So
So
why I think like, sorry, go ahead.
those individuals who have the capacity to be like that, again from a neuropsychological perspective, if you have psychopathic tendencies, literally, if you have psychopathic tendencies, you are literally capable of thriving in this environment. If you don't have psychopathic tendencies, you're rather the opposite of that. It will be very difficult for you to thrive
To define
in this
psychopathy.
environment. Psychopathic individual is somebody who literally has a brain damage on the right side of the brain. He does not have empathy. He does not have emotional intelligence. He does not even feel emotions, in fact. He purely thinks in a very calculated, rational manner. He would look every individual as an object. For example, he does not have any guilt. He manipulates people. If he's very intelligent, he's going to manipulate people a lot.
Mm.
And these kind of very antisocial kind of characteristics are
So
there.
there's this myth. I don't know if I want to call it myth, but like that if you're a genius, all the geniuses are like antisocial, so to speak,
Um,
if you
they
will.
all geniuses are not necessarily psychopathic. They can be
Not necessarily.
psychopathic, of course. It is possible. It is possible that a psychopath is also a genius. For example, um, um, the lots of people actually have this opinion now about these top billionaires, like for example Elon Musk, that he definitely has. If he's not a psychopath, he definitely has some psychopathic tendencies, or at least have some sociopathic tendencies, or probably his sociopathic side
Well,
comes out very strongly in some of his roles that he plays in the as an entrepreneur. But he's also very brilliant. He's also we can definitely call him a genius as well.
but
So
I think at that, being at like
yeah,
in the as we're talking about like capitalist society, being where he is, like super billionaire or whatever that may
yeah.
be, one has to be sociopath to be at that
Yeah,
place.
yeah, absolutely,
It is,
absolutely, absolutely,
that's like the primeness of capitalism, right? It is the convergence of
absolutely,
capital
absolutely.
in the top peak of the
Yeah,
pyramid.
exactly. So, typical institutional environments where, of course, where you are completely devoid of emotions and intuition and moral ability to perceive things from that angle, then of course your psychopathic or sociopathic side actually comes out. I think for the viewers, I think it is a bit necessary to define what is psychopathic and sociopathic. I already described what is psychopathic. Sociopathic has the same tendency, but it is more a product of environmental conditioning. Psychopathic are referred to as more genetic. You can become you can be a psychopath because of your genes. It could be by birth. You have those characteristics, but sociopathy is something that is a product of environment. You can be living in a very bad neighborhood, for example. You can have very harsh upbringing experience. Then subsequently, you can have sociopathic traits eventually
So
inculcated in your society.
so
Yeah,
this so when we're talking about this education system, right? So if you want to talk about like decolonizing education, we have to rethink the purpose of the education. Essentially, we have to start from there,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
also like
We need
understand
to.
like what was
Yeah,
the purpose of like colonization, both
yeah.
from go ahead.
Exactly. The purpose of colonization was to um, exploit every resource that was out there. I mean, you're sitting in Europe, you're like, okay, fine, I need to expand my capacity to rule. I need to become more powerful. I need more resources for that. And all of these countries have these resources, and I should go and occupy all of these countries and use the all kind of resources, from human resource to the land they have, from the minerals and everything they have, and use it to maximize my power. So that was the whole idea, to cut the long story short. So for that purpose, a lot of manpower was also needed. And when the colonial forces, especially the British,
Alrighty. So on this point, one of the things that I want to discuss was that when we're talking about decolonization, we have to first think about what is decolonization and what is the
yeah,
purpose of education itself.
yeah. So the purpose of education should be to connect or make capable each individual to fulfill their purpose of existence. So this actually opens up more questions. In fact, what is exactly is the purpose of our existence? Because the colonial era has basically inculcated an alternative purpose of our existence into our minds through education, that is to serve the colonial order and
Mm,
serve the institutions. And they have introduced this idea of success, and that success only comes when you go and serve either the corporate system or become part of some state machinery, and only then you are actually successful. So, in order to be successful in the system, you need to be educated, and subsequently, people actually send their children to education to so that they can actually become successful in the contemporary way of the society is actually operating. So, that was the agenda, I think, behind the installation
Colonialism.
of the educational system by the colonial forces. For example, if you talk about the British, uh, uh, why the British actually introduced this education model in subcontinent. So, and in this context, if you read this document titled "Minutes of Education" by Lord Macaulay, it's the entire document is right now available at Columbia University's website. Uh, and in that document, the purpose has been specifically described, and that is to convert the mindset and the value system and the vision and the self-image of the local population so that the new individual, the educated individual, is capable of serving the British Empire and its agenda in the subcontinent. I mean, the local
And I
individual
think
working for the
one
British
of the one of the
mandate,
key points he says is they have to think like us.
like us, exactly. Think
Like so
like us,
you think
dream
like us,
like
dress
us,
like us,
breathe
look
like us,
like
dress
us.
like us. Exactly.
You know,
You know
we
this
have
concept of kala and grace. You know
we call
the
them coconuts. Brown from the inside, white from the inside.
exactly.
So you
Shahnawaz
know,
Farooqi has written somewhere that these educated Indians at that time were even referred to as baboons by the Britishers. Baboons, the monkey, the type of a monkey. That's
oh
called
really?
baboon. Yeah,
Oh yeah, that's like a
and
wild monkey. Yeah,
yeah, and
baboon is like a. Oh yeah.
yeah, and from that term, the term babu actually came from. You know,
Oh really?
yeah.
So basically, we're
So
calling each other bandar.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So whenever somebody is calling another person babu, this term is used in India. So and
Uh,
probably not anymore in Pakistan. I haven't heard this term since a long time. But uh, if somebody's looking like appears like a Westerner, in their appearance, that person was referred to as babu. So the term was actually coming from uh, this
Baboons.
term baboons, the monkey who has this capacity to imitate others. So that
Hmm.
was the idea of education, and they have been very successful, and probably we have accepted and adopted it to an extent that it is unthinkable for us to even think and imagine some kind of an alternative right now for a lot of people. Some people are trying and they're realizing, but that's a very small minority who is
Hmm.
trying to, think about some alternative. But majority, if you look at the majority, then this
So
idea of
if we're talking about this and we're discussing that, right? Then the purpose of education is about to teach how to think in the right way, in a way.
uh,
You will.
it's a not just think. I mean, thinking is a kind of a um, secondary function. The primary
Okay.
function is a way of being, the way you actually see yourself, the way you actually see your purpose, and the thinking process is then used to achieve that purpose ultimately.
Hmm.
So your thinking, of course, has to be aligned with that purpose as well. And that's also the part of education. But the starting point is, how the person actually see himself in the future, ultimately where he's going to take his life towards, what ends he's going to pursue. So that's the primary idea. I mean, if you are able to uh, shape that and subsequently uh, you are able to, direct the individual toward a specific uh, way of being. And in order to have that way of life and way of being, the individual has to be in a specific kind of an institutional environment or be in a specific kind of a society. And that is why lots of people in Pakistan who have become educated, the first thing they have this in mind, okay, fine, we don't want to be in Pakistan, we want to go abroad because that is where most of our aspirations can be better achieved
Achieved.
ultimately.
So I think
Yeah.
like in the past, like, whatever, a few hundred years, there's been two simultaneous evolutions in education. What is, as you mentioned, is the industrialization of the education, because
Yeah,
education system was never like this, where it was like, the grade system and the age-based system, the classes that we have developed, like the first grade,
yeah,
second, third grade, fourth,
yeah. That's
and
a
then
that's a typical factory model that we're talking about. Yeah,
absolutely. And even within that, the percentage and the grades that we have, the
yeah,
marks that everybody gets. So that's one
yeah,
aspect of it. And then the other
yeah,
aspect of that, particularly in our area, is colonization. So it is two different
yeah,
two domains that have came and impacted our education. And and that is, I think, they both need to be tackled with, they both need to be unpacked, and they need to be fixed in a way that we have to kind of like undo the doing, so to speak. We have to undo the doing.
yeah, yeah,
One of the things that I think is like with colonization in particular, right? Is, I think, well, in colonization they even succeeded where the Crusaders failed, because they
mhm,
not only changed the thought process, the education system, but they
yeah,
also change the socio-economic political model of Islam,
yeah,
the judiciary system, the thought
yeah,
process, the whole
yeah,
structure that we have. So,
yeah,
it is, even the education, the madrasa systems. So, yeah, I mean, so, that's what we were talking about, like the purpose of education. And so we cannot reclaim, I guess, our education without understanding what our education was before colonials came, I guess. Is that
yeah,
probably a good way to start thinking about it?
yeah. Yeah, we can do that. I think what we need to do is to just ask ourselves that who we are. Uh, I'm not talking about um, some concept that we cannot directly experience. I'm talking about stuff. I'm just talking about just looking at ourselves and see to what extent we are capable of uh, developing and using the full extent of all the faculties and capacities that we have. And when you simply look at from that perspective, an educated person immediately realizes that there are lots of things that he can possibly do, but he cannot do. Why? Because the education system never got to nurture all of those things. And that includes your moral
Or even
intuition,
discourage it?
yeah, even discourage it. Your creativity, your moral intuition, your emotional intelligence, your ability to think in terms of the bigger picture, connect with the divine, all of these things. Your sense of reverence, um, your sense of mystery, for example. There are lots of things the education system never, and all of these instincts are there right here. They exist. They're dormant, and sometimes they even create a sense of desperation inside of us. And we do feel something. If something's deeply missing, and there's a void in our lives, but we most people are unable to understand what exactly that void is. And they keep doing what the education system has actually taught them, and the system expects them to do, and they keep following the same path. But despite doing all of that, I think a lot of people, when they sit down with themselves, they sense a void deep down inside of them, as if something is deeply missing from their lives, and but they are unable to understand what that thing is. So I think what we need to do is to just slow down and just connect with our beings and see okay, where this thirst is actually coming from. And when the more we realize this thing, okay, this is missing from our lives, and subsequently we begin to see, okay, fine, we don't want our kids to actually follow the same path and miss the same things as well.
So we cannot really decolonize until we understand the epistemological differences between the colonizers and us. Because again, when we talk about, like, we have to go back to our epistemological sovereignty, right? And what I mean by that is the colonizers' education system is godless. It's totally undivine, so to speak. And what I'm trying to say, undivine, is when anti-divine, right?
Yeah,
And everything is about that. But our education
yeah,
system, as we talk about it, um, our epistemology is all about divine. The
Yeah,
sources of our knowledge is all from like Wahi, Ilham, and all that. And their all of their epistemological foundation is human intellect.
yeah,
So
yeah. Just
until sorry, go ahead.
yeah, just to unpack what you are saying, just want to bring in a couple of details into the discussion and connect it to what I was saying earlier. Uh, when you say this epistemological differences, so you probably have to go back to René Descartes. René Descartes is the father of this idea known as Cartesian dualism. And this Cartesian dualism is about, disconnecting the mind from the body, the rational thinking mind from the body, and your emotional side, your intuition, your creativity, and all of these things. There's a split. And according to René Descartes, your rational side is superior, and rest of the things that you have are inferior. They're not considered worthy of. And this is basically where the Western epistemological, this is a fundamental building block of Western epistemological trajectory that they have taken onwards from there. And
The
this is the
structure,
foundation of the
their
modern,
framework.
yeah, this is the foundation of the modern scientific thought. This is about the way they see themselves. This is how they see the entire universe also. And anything that appears visible from this epistemological lens is worthy of analysis, worthy of consideration, and anything that does not appear or make sense from this angle is rejected ultimately.
And
Uh,
again, it forces like conformity, like education on conformity. Like,
yeah,
you
yeah, and the divine alternative that you were talking about does not reject your qalb, for example.
hmm,
Quran keeps talking about the purification of the qalb, means that whatever is happening
in your
inside
heart.
your qalb in your heart is significantly important. All right. So the disconnect that exists in Cartesian dualism in the Western epistemological thought does not exist in Islam. And for example,
This
Iqbal keeps talking about this dichotomy between the thinking mind and the heart. The khird and the qalb. And Iqbal keeps talking about the rational way of thinking and the ishq. That, for example, if I recall that verse. Um, um, I'm very bad at recalling Paul's verses right now. Uh,
That's okay.
अकल ने कह भी दिया ला इला तो क्या हासिल दिलो निगाह मुसलमान नहीं तो कुछ भी नहीं. That's Iqbal saying.
Absolutely,
So that,
absolutely.
mentally, if you, despite the fact you're mentally understood, until unless your heart is not. So, from an Islamic epistemological angle, your heart and emotional state are important. In fact, they have a priority over the rational way of thinking. All right, what your heart is basically saying has a significant say in the way you see things. And this is where this vacuum actually comes in. The vacuum I was talking about, subject, this vacuum is because he has ignored what's happening in his heart. Yes.
Yeah, and as you talk about Iqbal, right? One of the things I strongly believe in is like all of these things.
Mhm.
Lama Iqbal already talked about it. He
Yeah.
talked about the problem. He talked about the solution
Yeah.
as well, and he
Yeah.
discussed the solution. It's just unfortunate that now, even like 100 years later, what is it, like 2025,
Um,
you know, we're still
what Iqbal kind of give you a broader sense of direction. That this is where you need to go. But
absolutely.
what he did not did was to provide you a more detailed guideline and how you're going to get to this point. And that is why probably people read Iqbal, they get inspiration from him, but they're so much stuck in the modern system that they are unable to, find a practical way out from the system as such.
I think one of the things, because people forget that he was a lawyer, but essentially he was a philosopher.
Yeah.
He had a PhD in philosophy, so he
Um,
understood,
yeah.
didn't he? Am I wrong?
Yeah, he was a mystic also.
He was a
He was
mystic
a
also, but
he was a yeah,
the point I'm trying to contend is he understood
yeah,
Western philosophy, the way they think. If you
yeah,
define
yeah,
philosophy as,
absolutely, absolutely.
if you want to define philosophy
Mm.
as as the rationale to the reasoning of the thoughts, then he
Yeah,
understood that from the Western perspective, and then he
yeah,
saw that from the Muslim perspective,
absolutely,
and then
absolutely.
he saw the collapse of
Yeah,
of the Ottoman Khilafah, and he saw
Yeah.
like the World War One, the collapse of that society. So he knew, and same thing with
Yeah.
Jinnah as well. But
Mm.
we don't see Mr. Muhammad Ali Jinnah like that, like other Muhammad Ali Jinnah like that. But certainly
Yeah.
Allama Iqbal, he understood uh, this the contrast, the differences. It's like being oil and water. Even if you put oil and water in the same cup, they were never mixed.
Yeah.
You know,
So even well before Allama Iqbal, even Imam Ghazali understood all of these
absolutely.
things very well. And during his time, he was not Greek dealing with the Western Enlightenment, rationalist, the scientific worldview, but he was definitely dealing with the Greek philosophy or Greek thought, and that was kind of penetrating in Muslim
So
world.
that
So
was so that is you make a very critical point, right? Because that was the
yeah,
first time that the European
yeah,
thought or the non-Western thought that came
yeah,
into the Muslim world or the Arab world at
yeah,
that time, and that's
yeah,
also triggered, Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal and the Kalam and Aqaid and the science of
yeah.
Kalam, right? In the
Absolutely,
studies of Kalam,
absolutely,
right? So I
absolutely.
mean, so I think what we are going through is again a continuation of
Continuation
that
of the
of
same
of,
problem. Yeah,
of the same problem. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, what happened that the Greek ultimately inspired the European thinkers later on, and they took it much further. And of course, there are fundamental technical differences between the Greek thought and the Western thought, but the foundation is probably the same. They took the
Okay.
inspiration from Greeks and subsequently took it forward. And
So
now
when you
we're
talk
dealing
about
with the same
Greek,
kind of problem.
so when you talk about Greek and Western, what's the
Yeah.
difference?
I'm not a very good expert in that. Um, what I briefly understand about this is the way they see the structure of the universe, the way Western uh,
So you're talking about
thinkers
when you talk.
came
Okay,
about.
I think what you're talking about Western is post-Renaissance Europe. Is that correct?
Yeah, post anything, yeah,
Post-Enlightenment. Post.
exactly.
So I think okay, yeah. Yeah. So okay, now I understand. So what are you talking about? Like when we talk about like sorry, when we talk about like Greek history and
Yeah,
when you talk about like the Greek philosophy, and when you're talking about the contemporary post-Renaissance Europe, that's
yeah,
post-Enlightenment
yeah,
Europe, modernization, if
yeah,
you will. What they call
exactly.
the modernization or
I
post-modernization.
think,
Okay.
yeah, I think Greek for Greeks, the question of epistemology was not the primary question. But this became the primary question for the post-Renaissance thought ultimately. And that was probably the defining difference between the two. Uh, Greek first describe what is to be analyzed, and then they uh, discuss how it can be analyzed. In the Enlightenment thought, they said how we can analyze things, and subsequently, through that epistemological lens, whatever is visible is worthy of investigation, and anything that is not visible from that lens is not worthy of investigation. For them, the question of epistemology became more important, and for the Greeks, it was kind of the opposite. That was the fundamental difference, I think. But Greeks were also very rational in their view of things, and that thing kind of continued uh, in European thought also.
Mm. One of the things I want to come back to your point about Iqbal and the khayal and qalb.
Yeah,
Yeah, even the heart right now, and people didn't realize about it, but heart has its own neurons, right? It has its own
yeah,
brain, right?
yeah,
So like all the emotional trauma that we have is in our heart. It's not so much
mm,
in our brain. So this like
yeah,
neuroscience, like that's why like if somebody is in ventilator or whatnot, right? They need like if somebody breaks their neck, they still need something so they can breathe with, but they don't need anything in their heart because heart has its
mm,
own neural system and it's
yeah,
self-sufficient on that. And there's like this person, and I cannot think of their name. That this they did their study on this, the nervous system of the
mm,
heart, and that's what we're talking about. Like a lot of these confused or don't want to use the term confused. These colonialized mind, they just think that heart, and particularly when we're talking about Islam, they think like qalb is just like the heart, and there's nothing to do
yeah,
with the mind and the thought process and anything like that. But qalb has or the heart itself. There's another part of mysticism, right, where we're talking about. tasawwuf and what is tasqiyah and all of that. But even outside of that, the heart,
mm,
physical manifestation of the heart has neurons on it, neurons in it, and even like all the emotional damage that we have when we talk about breaking the heart, is actually impacting your heart.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Um, so I wouldn't,
So,
yeah.
so did you want to make a point before I go to the next thing that I had?
Um, no, I think we can move forward here.
I think so. We talked about Ghazali and Ibn Khaldun, right? And
Yeah,
everybody like since then, right? There's so many, Razi and so many more.
yeah,
So when we talk about education
yeah,
and we're talking about decolonization of education,
yeah.
is it about going back to the past or is it about reinventing the future?
It's about connecting with ourselves,
Hmm.
connecting deep down inside what's missing, connecting with uh, the the parts of our being that have not been nurtured. I think we can sense the problem right now. I mean, you don't have to uh, go deep down into the past, and we can sense right now what exactly is missing from our lives. Of course, it will take a lot of introspection to actually to increase the resolution of that. Or the first, when somebody looks deep down inside for the first time, they don't understand what's happening. But it takes some time to increase the resolution and precisely see what exactly is going on. Sometimes it can take months, sometimes it can take years, but we can reach to this point. And this is fundamental because this will tell us that what exactly is missing and where exactly we need to work on. Because we cannot continue as a human society. I mean, this realization is even coming in the Western circles, that we have, created a very unbalanced kind of a society. That was the point of the book written by Ian McGilchrist, which I quoted a few minutes ago. Uh, and he's talking about this unbalanced way of uh, uh, the entire structure of the Western civilization, the way it operates, and it sees everything from human problem to the entire planet in a very typical way, and it only try to uh, fix problems from that perspective. So this realization is very much coming from the Western circles also, but they don't really have a very clear blueprint exactly what needs to be done.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that we have that. And the
And we have that.
unfortunate, and we have that, but the unfortunate part is like our traditional madrasa systems,
Yeah,
they're void of this thought. They
yeah,
have, the madrasas themselves have been, you know,
yeah,
colonialized. And,
yeah, exactly.
and, you know, and that's what I wanted to actually talk about when we are talking about the solution of the problem is our
Yeah,
Islamic models, pre-colonial models, or this our Islamic epistemology and our Islamic intellectual history and heritage.
yeah,
And how it is like now it has just become. I think one of the impacts of colonialism, um, well, it has two parts to it, right? In my experience, one is that Alhamdulillah, even like with the colonialization in Africa and South here in Asia and uh, Europe and other places, Turkey, even with like uh, uh, iron fist and like having such uh, condemnation of the ulama and their what is the word that I'm looking for? Their prosecution and their
yeah,
Islam has survived, right? So our
yeah,
knowledge base is there, right? That's like when we talk about Renaissance earlier, their problem is that they don't have uh, their their religious knowledge anymore. Under
yeah,
Islam, we have, right? But that knowledge has failed to nurture the thought that needs to be there to decolonize and implement that in the global structure. Like what we have done with Madrasa system is basically develop litigators. And what I mean by that is just lawyers. And what I mean by that is they're there and they're having
Yeah,
these discussions about fiqh. And they're good in their discussions, they're good in their argumentation. They're very good at, having these discussion logic, argumentation, rhetoric, but their uh, their scope of vision is very narrow. Like they don't uh, the intellectual thought in the mother system has not decolonized yet.
yeah. So what's missing there is also a connection from the heart, is actually. The Madrasa system also nurtures the brain. The same problem is very much there. It nurtures the brain, but does not nurture the heart.
I mean, don't they
Yeah.
have like these halkas of zikr and everything else and whatnot?
It has been compartmentalized. There are definitely these kind of things, but they are compartmentalized. A typical student who is going through education in
Mm.
a madrasa environment does not get exposed to all of these things uh, by default. I mean, he has to find these venues, make an effort to do that, and most of those people are not even aware that all of these things are there because the entire educational experience and curriculum and all of the study requirements are so hectic because the student does not simply get enough time to think about something else.
Yeah, and
Examinations and
again, unfortunately, like even in the mother system, we have now this
yeah,
marking system, the grade system, year one, year
yeah,
two,
yeah,
year three.
absolutely, absolutely,
And not only that, as you're talking about like the going back to the purpose of education, the purpose of
yeah,
education, mother system has just become to just create another madrasa. Like the way I think of
yeah,
it is like
yeah,
have a medical student who
yeah,
graduates from a medical student university.
yeah,
He goes there, opens another medical university.
yeah,
They go there, they make another medical university, but nobody's opening the hospitals.
yeah, yeah,
So like
exactly. It's like
so
a pyramid scheme. Yeah, it's called a pyramid.
nobody, yeah, nobody's making the hospitals because everybody like their main purpose is just okay, just stick with this, teach, keep on teaching, keep on teaching. I'm not saying that is wrong. I'm saying this that's incomplete, because
Yeah,
ilm bila amal wabal, wa amal
yeah,
bila ilm is you know.
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, go ahead. So
yeah. I
so
mean,
that's why I'm like, what happened with the madrasa system?
exactly. So they have also adopted the same institutional design. And I was reading this research paper published in a journal a couple of years back that that paper was literally praising the Darul Uloom in India to have adopted this institutional framework uh, for the sake of efficiency and productivity. And the guy was literally using these terms. And I was like, this guy have no idea what
No
he's
idea
talking
what he's
about,
talking about.
what he's basically appreciating.
So I think again this comes back to the time that everything that we look at it again colonization, like the thought of the
Yeah,
colonization, everything we look at is at a surface level. We don't
yeah,
understand like the second or third layer of the depth and
absolutely,
and
absolutely.
the impacts of them, not only on a person but eventually on the society.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the madrasa perspective or the perspective of a typical jurist coming out of these madaris is to only analyze things um, in isolation. I mean, they would divide the whole into bits and they would analyze the bits. Is this bit halal or not? And but they have zero understanding about, literally zero understanding about, okay, when you put these bits together, then what kind of a whole they actually create. Often these bits
Yeah,
are actually halal, but when you combine these bits in a specific fashion, you create something entirely different. And oftentimes the effect of this whole is very different from the bits
the
themselves.
microcosm of that problem.
Yeah. So the juz and the kul, if you
Right.
use this now, they only focus on the juz. And they are doing this in the education system, they're doing this in the banking system in
Mhm.
particular. They only focus on the bits and they assume somehow the total is going to get fixed on its own.
They're even doing that with the legal system now. Like I know, like
Yeah,
there's some like ulama who are coming out and they're just trying to like
yeah,
what they did with the banking system, they're doing it with the constitutional British system.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah, exactly. So
And
they think they can fix the entire institutional framework from the constitution to the parliament to the corporate system to the banking system to the education system by just just focusing on the bits. They can eliminate and replace work on some of the bits, and somehow they assume that it is going to somehow fix the entire system just like that. Um,
I
and they simply don't. Well, what they fail to realize that the system right now, or the corporate or the bureaucratic system, uses every kind of change that actually happens inside of them for its own advantage. For example, if you hire a mufti as a CEO of a corporation, then the corporation is going to use the CEO instead of the CEO transforming the corporation into something else. So that how I actually, and they
I
think
think
it,
one of the
yeah,
unfortunate
yeah,
situation has been, and I do not agree with that when they talk about like the knowledge of the deen versus the knowledge of dunya. For us,
yeah,
everything is deen. Like how do we do
yeah,
tijara is deen. How do we run
yeah,
our government is deen. How we live, sleep, eat, drink is deen. And
yeah. They agree
there's
with this.
this the the
Yeah,
the,
I
the
think, yeah,
segregation or
yeah,
the segregation of like so-called the religious education and the secular education, even in the madrasas or like the
yeah.
secular system, because like pre-colonial Islam, they used to like the scientific method was developed by uh,
There was some Muslim,
Al-Khwarizmi, yeah.
yeah,
Think about that. Like
um,
Al-Khwarizmi, same
but
thing with algebra. The reason algebra was developed or constructed was they were trying to solve the Virasa problem, right? The inheritance
yeah,
problem, because it becomes so. My point is, how many madrasas today teach algebra?
I think they don't disagree with this idea that Deen and Dunya are basically the same thing. But what do they fail to realize that which part of the dunya need to be fixed and at what level?
Okay.
And they are like uh, they're perfectly all right with the overall macroeconomic designs that are coming from the West. And they say, okay, for example, the banking system, riba is not okay, and gharar is not okay, speculation is not okay. And they would try to eliminate these components from the system, and they would assume, okay, fine, now this is better, and now this will evolve in the right direction, without realizing that the system itself has its own momentum. It has some very fundamental features um, that simply cannot be fixed by eliminating riba. I mean, the system would keep operating in the same manner still, and creating the same kind of results, even if you eliminate riba from it. So this level of understanding is not there. For example,
So
if you have a soft drink, and it has a little bit of alcohol, then if you remove alcohol from that soft drink, it is still poisonous. I mean, it
it's
has
still
it
bad,
has
eh?
it has a ton of sugar. It is acidic. It destroy your
You
uh,
can this. Sorry, go ahead. There are videos on YouTube where
yeah,
you can take Coca-Cola, and put it on
yeah,
a rusty thing, and it will,
yeah,
clean it up and
clean it up.
clean the toilets.
Yeah,
This is basically a
exactly,
caustic soda, which is a
exactly.
cleaning agent.
But Coca-Cola is halal. Technically, it's halal. It's halal, it is okay to consume. I mean, this is the problem with Sharia compliance. I mean, it will tell you that this is halal, despite the fact the thing can be very harmful. That means that simply the label of halal is not sufficient enough. You have to take into consideration other factors also. And this happens when put things into uh, put lots of bits into a specific combination, then the kind of results they actually produce, those results has to be analyzed also and see if this totality is actually taking you in the right direction or not. So
So
that is where
can
then
we
I'll
can we? Sorry, go ahead. I wanted to complete
yeah
your thought.
I would have to if I go ahead, then I would have to unpack a lot of things. It will take 3 hours.
Please go ahead, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. We
Trying
have plenty of time.
just trying to keep it as
No,
brief
no,
as
please.
possible.
I have plenty of time. Like it's totally up to you. Go ahead.
Yeah,
I want to unpack it.
yeah. I mean, if you um, look at the um, the banking, if you're talking about the banking system stands on lots of commitments from lots of stakeholders. It has made certain commitments with the depositors. It had made commitments with the stakeholders. It is under the regulatory authority of the state bank. Um, and all of these commitments create a specific kind of a behavior um, that the banking system is expected to um produce. For example, you have to be very risk averse. Otherwise, depositors are going to take out their money if you are not risk averse. All right. You have to uh, operate with a specific kind of clients. For example, the client has to be credit worthy. You cannot simply do business with every person. The person has to be credit worthy, and for being credit worthy, you need to have certain amount of assets that you have. So eventually, the wealth keep circulating in people who already have lots of assets. The wealth does not get into the hands of those who do not have any assets. All right, and that is why
Mm.
we have this problem of wealth being transferred from the majority to the fewer, because um, another thing happens that
And the
during this.
philosophy of Islam is totally different, right? Like the haves are
Yeah,
going to the have-nots. And as we
yeah,
talked about earlier, the only time I think in economic history where there was an economic equilibrium
yeah,
was like during the Muslim time, where there were people who everybody had enough money, had enough gold that they could give
yeah,
zakah, but there was nobody there to receive the zakah.
yeah. So if you have lots of savings, you're just an ordinary individual. You manage to save some amount. Um, what would be the first um, option that you have right now in your mind? If you are a typical educated person um, whose entrepreneurial spirit, for example, has been suppressed. That's another topic that we can actually unpack here. And if you are somebody who is now a graduate of a university who does not have his entrepreneurial instincts attached, you would typically go and want to work for a corporations. And if you do that, let's suppose you are able to save some money over the period of years. What you're going to do with that amount of money when your entrepreneurial spirit has been suppressed? You're going to put it in a bank, of course.
Their
Very likely
cognitive
you're going to put
ability
it.
is not there to utilize
Yeah,
those assets,
yeah.
right?
So you're going to put the money into the bank, and the bank is going to use it uh, to create wealth for those individuals who already have um, lots of collateral to offer. So the wealth in this sense keeps circulating in a specific circuit, partly because the education system has suppressed the entrepreneurial spirit of the population, and partly because there are no other venues for the capital to go somewhere else. For example, just imagine a society where most people are entrepreneurial, have this entrepreneurial appetite. Their entrepreneurial spirit has not been suppressed by the education. All right. And they have a surplus amount of money in their pockets. They're very likely going to invest in creating new businesses. And by invest, I mean but they would very likely start new businesses. And in this process of starting new businesses, they're going to create more employees. They're going to create more circulation of wealth. Um, and but right now, what happens that people instead of starting a new business, they rather uh, put it inside a bank, and the bank uh, only prefer to give it to those individuals who already have lots of collateral. And that is how the wealth keeps getting sucked and sucked. And there is another phenomenon of bankruptcies that eventually emerge.
There is
Bankruptcies
a
happen.
Sorry, I wanted to finish your thought, and there's
Yeah,
another economic concept that I want to discuss with you, but
yeah,
please finish your thought.
yeah. And bankruptcies happen because there is a shortage in the demand of the capital and the amount of capital that actually exists. And this shortage is actually created by the way the modern banking system actually works. It keep creating more demand. The capitalism keep creating more demand, and
That's the
the
aggregated factor, right?
yeah, yeah, and the bank keep asking for principal plus the interest. The bank is not just taking back the principal amount; it is asking for principal plus interest. But the problem is this amount of interest does not physically or conceptually exist in the society. So ultimately, what happens that some people eventually have to get bankrupt when they are actually because there is shortfall. You have this musical chair game in the schools that we kids used to play. So there was always one guy who would left out, and this is what actually happens in the when you have a monetary system that is lend in capital to the people who want to start businesses or invest. So ultimately, the bank would want a principal plus interest, but the problem is that interest amount does not simply exist in the economy. So ultimately, what happens? This phenomenon known as hypothetication actually happens, and that means that some amount of real property will keep getting transferred to the banks because somebody will definitely get eventually bankrupt. Why? Because there is not enough capital to pay the amount of interest or the profit or whatever you call it. All right. And that is why the wealth keep getting, concentrated in fewer and fewer hands ultimately.
No, there's a
So,
concept
yeah,
that is called like a trickle down economy. Have you heard
yeah,
that? Okay, yeah.
yeah. I mean,
That again is like a false.
that's a yeah, total myth, exactly. That does not exist.
That does not. It's just like a theory
Yeah,
that was,
yeah,
I think, just
yeah,
created for
yeah,
capitalism or something. I've never
yeah.
actually seen that validated anywhere.
Yeah. It does not exist, especially when you're talking about a neoliberal economic model where the government is not intervening and everybody's able to do their things. In that kind of an economy, especially if it is dominated by the banking system and the corporations and the stock market and all of these institutions, then subsequently the opposite of trickle down effect, the trickle up effect actually happens. There is no trickle down, there's trickle
There's
up that is happening.
or
Yeah,
sucking up.
yeah. Exactly. So it's a kind of a siphoning effect that the banking system actually produce, and this is not because of. I mean, let's connect. I think we got into lots of details. We were talking about that. What is this totality? If you try to fix the bits, if you try to remove riba from the equation, you try to remove speculation from the equation. There's this entire system that is creating money supply in a way that is creating this problem of perpetual bankruptcies, that is creating this phenomenon of hypothetication where real wealth is being transferred from the people to the banking system. All of this will keep happening even in an environment where there is absolutely no interest. There is absolutely no speculation going on. Why? Because this is a function of a fractional reserve way of banking system. It is not a function of
So,
uh,
so,
riba itself.
so that's the well. That in itself would become riba, right? Because we never discuss about the concept of money versus currency and the fiat currency. Because fiat currency in itself is like you cannot just have money thrown out of nowhere. That is the like the pain point, isn't
Um,
it?
uh, I will not get into the technical details because that is the job of the scholars. I mean, they would, simply nail you down very quickly because they have all the details about the what exactly is riba and what is not. So let's not get there,
Okay,
uh, because that's a kind of debate I don't think we can win. But
okay.
what we can definitely highlight is that this problem of wealth distribution definitely exists and does not exist because of riba. It exists because of other components of the banking system. It exists. There is another very major problem that when the banking system become um, uh, widespread in a society, it has to spread this idea of love of wealth. If you don't love wealth, if you don't have love of wealth in your heart, all right, this whole cycle is not going to function. People has to run after this idea of they want to become wealthy because if they
And for
don't
that,
want
you
to
have to
become
be like
wealthy,
psychopath and a sociopath.
that's the eventual outcome of that, of course.
Hmm.
But what happens that you create a society where people become more materialistic, they become more inclined toward accumulating more and more wealth, and this create this problem of takasur, that is strictly condemned in Surah Takasur in Quran. That
Right.
if you are competing for wealth, then subsequently it is very likely they're going to forget about Akhira and subsequently you're going to end up in hellfire. That's a very clear message in Surah Takasur. So it create that this whole system creates an environment which inculcate will take the population toward this problem ultimately. And all of this is being missed out because the scholars are only looking at the bits. They're not looking at the totality. They're looking at the bits that, okay, we need to remove riba from the system, we need to remove speculation from the contracts, we need to remove this, we need to remove that, and the rest of the system is going to be somehow good. And you can find these scholars in Pakistan driving SUVs, luxury SUVs themselves.
I think one of the unfortunate part of, and again, I'm talking, because eventually, going back to our main topic, which was the decolonization of education, decolonization of madrasa, right?
Yeah,
I think one of the unfortunate part of this has become when we have divided the so-called, the religious education versus secular education. The ulama, the students who come out of the madrasas, they do not have skill set to earn money, and I think therefore right now, unfortunately or fortunately, like, and I want to give an example on that. Uh, like their most beneficial financial career path has become this Sharia compliance,
yeah,
right? Unfortunately. And like in the older days, like, anybody, like the purpose of education, like, was something like learning skills to live, live a sally, like, you become a plumber, you become an electrician, you become a, bridge maker or whatever, like a civil
yeah,
engineer, or you become whatnot, right? But that
yeah,
skill set of earning money has been extracted out of like what we call vocational training and
yeah,
or and things of that nature.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is definitely playing its a
Now you're talking about
part.
the SUVs and all that. All I'm saying is that
Yeah,
they
uh,
it seems like
there
that's
was,
the easiest path for them,
yeah,
unfortunately.
there was this deep-seated sense of insecurity, including financial insecurity. Probably that was there since probably a few generations, I guess. And just recently, the madrasa graduates have found a way. Okay, fine, we can actually get out of this uh, 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 apparent way of being where we have to live like some rejected part of the society. We can also become included, and for this inclusion, we want to appear uh, financially well off, and in this sense. So yeah, this is definitely playing its part. Another thing, what's happening right now is we have converted this profession of this role of mufti or jurist or the role of imam as a full-time kind of a position in the society. This was not a full-time position in Islamic history.
Even with waqf and awqaf, and what I mean
Mm,
by that,
yeah, Waqf and Awqaf would finance, but a a large number of muftis, according to Bail Halak, for example, um, for part-time scholars, part-time jurists, they would have a business and
Mhm.
they would volunteer for some of their time for these kind of activities. Or your family is business oriented, for example, and one of you're going to train one member of your family, one of your if you're a father, you're going to probably uh, ask one of your sons to become a jurist, and the rest of the family is going to support this
Become
one
Jewish, yeah.
individual. Yeah. So there was this financial support system in place. Either it was a voluntary position, the person was already financially secure, or was supported very much by the family or the community itself. But right now we have a very, and it was a very respected job. There was no ideological or inferiority complex that was there uh, uh, among people who were holding this position. Um, Back then. But right now, there is a lot of inferiority complex, and probably this is because of our colonial past also. Because
What is
look
the
at,
solution? Like what? Like let's say if we have to start
yeah,
like from scratch,
yeah,
like a blank sheet, how would we undo the doing?
yeah. This is one another challenge that we do not have a blank sheet right now. We already have a sheet that is completely, um, uh,
So we have to transform the whole system.
yeah. I mean, this in itself is a huge question mark that where exactly are we going to start? The first thing probably is to make enough people sensitized that things are not okay the way they are.
Hmm.
And when what happens when lots of people start thinking in the same way, then subsequently they would eventually come up with some alternative. Because if you realize that the way things are operating are not okay, and the way they should be operating is very different, then subsequently, because not it's not an individual effort. No individual can actually do this. It's a collective effort, and lots of people have to actually uh, come on board in order
Of
to.
course.
Probably it's not going to even happen in a generation or two. Probably it is probably going to, because we haven't reached to this point in one generation. It took like 5, 6 generations. In fact, the colonial period was not one single generation.
Hmm.
The Britishers ruled countries for more than like,
300, 2 years, 200
yes,
years or so,
approximately 200 years. So that's a
roughly
very
at
long period
least.
of time.
Yeah.
So transformation that has, penetrated deep down into our psyches, into our genes, in a couple of centuries is not going to go away in a generation, in fact. So it will take a lot of time. And how we're going to start, how we're going to, the more we're going to talk about, this is what is missing. This is what our fundamental needs. This is what we need to
I
change. Subsequently, things
But
will
like, as
start.
we're talking about education systems, right? And we were talking about the different education systems. I think one of the unintended consequence of this COVID and IT revolution has been that people do not need to go to colleges to kind of
Yeah,
like get degrees to get careers. So like,
yeah,
that thought, especially at least in the Western culture, I know
mhm,
I'm not saying everybody, but there is a strong thought that you can just go get like some degree, learn code and get into the business, and there's like so many different
yeah,
pathways into it. So that's been an
yeah,
unintended consequence of that, but that I think is a good. And you see that so much, like there's this, uh and I'm not condoning it or anything, but this industry of travelogue, online travelogues of YouTubers and everybody, like they have
yeah,
just become, that has
yeah,
become, I think what I'm trying to say, and I'm not doing a good job of that, that with with the technology, the way technology has become, and with AI and everything like that, these is bureaucracy of education. Let's call it what it is. A bureaucracy of education may not hold as much as it used to. I mean, we may still need it for certain professions. Let's say if you are a medical doctor, or if you are a lawyer, or if you are in a different, I don't know, a civil engineer or something like that.
yeah,
But like if you look
yeah,
like in history, like all the innovators, you talk about tech innovators, they are all
yeah.
college dropouts. Like Elon Musk, you talk about Bill Gates, or you talk about Steve Jobs, you talk about this, that, and another. All of them, like none of them, like they all dropped out of college.
Yeah, but they dropped off the college and they went into their garage probably. They
Right,
didn't went into sit in front of a computer screen for like 5 hours in a day.
right,
What's happening right now that we lots of people might come out of the education system. They might not want to spend time there, but this technology that we have wants to use individuals for its ends. For
absolutely.
example, you're not just watching YouTube. YouTube is also using you for some of its ends. It is also
Right,
conditioning you in a way that it wants to take advantage of you. So we are not in a world where human use technology. We are in a world where technology use humans in a specific way.
mm,
Um, yeah. So in this sense, artificial intelligence is also going to use human beings. So we are just going to replace one set of problem with another set of problem. If this kind of become it's already become widespread, in fact.
it has been infectious.
Yeah. So for the kind of that personality that Islam requires, we needed that human to human interaction, and that human to human interaction between a mentor and a mentee, where the relationship is there, with a sense of inspiration, and that inspiration, creates some kind of an impact on the other student who is seeking knowledge. So, and This is the kind of, the first, probably the most distinguishing feature, the connection between the teacher and the student. Unfortunately, that connection does not even exist in madrasas right now. So it's a big question mark for me. How do we, make this kind of a relationship more popular in the society? How these mentors and these mentees, students connect with each other in a way that students are not just gaining knowledge and information, they also getting inspired, and this internal transformation is happening as a result of this inspiration. Um, and this cannot happen using a screen to interact. This has to happen in a face to
Personal
face,
matter, personal
face to face,
person,
exactly, because that creates a very different kind of an impact on other people.
mentorship. Yeah,
Yeah. You can definitely interact with people using a screen, um, but and this has, of course, limited benefits. When you cannot physically meet, you can definitely interact with a screen. But the kind of transformation we're talking about, the kind of person that Iqbal used to, idealize in his, that is going to happen only when we have this
heart to heart.
face-to-face, heart-to-heart connection that is happening in real time and physical proximity. And this, unfortunately, does not happen in madrasa anymore. Even in madrasa, I mean,
Why
we
is it?
forget about it.
Why do you think that is? Because like apparently, like from looking from an outsider, right? It
Yeah,
seems though they have a very strong emotional connection with their teachers. Like you talk about Darul Karachi, you talk about Mufti Taqi Usmani Sahib, you talk about like so many
yeah,
other teachers. Whoever graduates from the school, or which I'm just using like him an example,
yeah,
right? Whichever school they graduate from, they have this kind of like emotional connection
yeah.
to
Yeah,
that.
you can say that about two top tier madrasas. Probably, um, I mean, the top madrasas, and there might be some teachers who are connecting with their students on that level, but probably that's a small minority that we're talking about. Um, and I'm sharing this after getting feedback from lots of madrasa students. Madrasa students have themselves have actually come forward and expressed that we are unfortunately facing this problem in the seminaries that we are studying. The smaller madaris all over the country, for example, I mean there are definitely exceptions. You definitely
Of
find
course, of course.
teachers everywhere, even in conventional schools, that emotionally connect with their students. Um and then, of course, in madrasa you can also find teachers who emotionally connect with their students, but that is not what the system of madrasa is basically aiming towards. They just happen to be there by chance. All right. So and they somehow create some good impact in the sense, but in general not going to find these kind of individuals, this kind of connection between teachers. And I often tell my students that the relationship between you and me is going to start after the end of the semester. You know, I mean, I say this oftentimes during the middle of the semester, or during the start of the semester, that the relationship between you and me is going to start only after the semester has ended, once you have got the grade, because the interaction that we're going to have afterwards is going to, be the actual relationship between a teacher and a student. Right now, it's just a formality that we are going through. And oftentimes, the students are unable to connect with the teacher because of the kind of authority the teacher exerts by.
How do you emotionally connect with your students?
Um, how do I emotionally connect with the students? I try to treat them like human beings. I try to treat them like they have they have emotions. They have a moral sense. And of course, the institutional environment kind of restricts me to the extent of which I can interact with them. But I try to do my best in that environment. I try to be as flexible as possible, try to engage them with uh, uh, in the discussion to the extent possible, and try to humanize the discussion. I mean, I don't try to, I try not to teach courses which are too technical. I try to teach courses where the human element is very much there, and that is where there's a much greater possibility of connecting with the students, because you can bring in the problems human beings are facing, the students are themselves facing in their personal life, in their professional lives, and when the discussion rotates around those problems, then subsequently
Mm,
there is a connection that eventually is formed
mm.
between. But that
But
also rarely
again, if sorry, go ahead.
that does not happen with 100% of the students,
Of
because the
course.
typical view of a student is that, okay, this is an authority that can actually penalize me and you can punish me and I can get a bad grade in the final exam. So this is how they see you as a threat to marriage. They don't see you as a mentor.
Mm.
So that is why I say that my relationship with you is going to start only after the semester has
This,
ended and you've got the grade. Because once the grade is announced, the teacher is not a threat anymore. And if there is some kind of a connection that is established
it's
before,
very
yeah,
interesting. You're defining teacher as a threat.
yeah,
You
it's
know, right?
the teacher is absolutely a threat in this sense.
To
I
your
mean, teacher can
career.
be very to, of course, in a private institutional environment where student is paying a fees to, so there is a financial pressure on the, if I'm not going to pass the course, I'm going to get a bad grade and I'm going to have to pay the fees again. I have to redo the entire course. It's going to waste my 3 months, etc.
And money. Yeah.
And money, of course. So, uh, and most of the teachers, unfortunately, are not very kind to students. Very few teachers are trying to be, you know, connect with the students on a human to human level. Most of the teachers are not like that. They also see the student as a threat. The students see the teacher as a threat. Um, and
Why do the teachers think of
probably
students as threat?
because the student can complain, and that can actually jeopardize the career of a teacher.
Mm.
Yeah. So, or and oftentimes, a lot of teachers are just doing a job. They're not there to create an impact. And when you're doing a job, so your own emotions does not get involved, and oftentimes as a teacher you are stressed as well. So the student become a problem to manage instead of something that you can contribute positively into.
What two things, and they are not related, but I think let me just go with one of them that, is kind of like the flow of the conversation right now.
Yeah,
You stated earlier that the way to change is to create the thought or to develop the thought about uh, about the concern of the society, right? Or something to that effect. I don't remember exactly
yeah,
what he said, but you said, like I asked you what is the solution, and you said we have to first let we need a lot of people, and first we have to inculcate this thought that there's a problem at a bigger level, and how do we do that? Am I saying it correctly, or do you want to like rephrase it in a better
yeah,
way?
yeah. Well, there's a verse by Iqbal where he says something like, "है तेरे ज़माने का इमाम
Barakallah.
है वही तेरे ज़माने का इमाम बरगा." If I remember the wording correctly, जो तुझको हाजिर व मौजूद से बेजार करे. I mean, the
Mm,
true leader is somebody who makes you uncomfortable with the status quo. So that is the first thing. I mean, people need to be, exposed. This is the problem. This is where you're missing. Um, and people are actually facing it, feeling it. Whenever you're deprived of a need, your system shouts. When you're thirsty, you feel it. All right, and when it is perpetual, it becomes excruciating. That is why we have so many distractions right now in the society, and this distraction economy is, thriving because people want to escape without realizing, and they don't have enough time to sit down and reflect what exactly is basically the problem that is making them desperate. So, especially in modern urban environments, people are desperate. They're looking for escapes. That is why this attention economy is thriving. Um, and so what we need
mm,
to help people see is that look, this is exactly the problem that you are suffering from right now, and make them connect from there.
Mhm.
So the more you sensitize people to these problems, the more likely they're going to appreciate the solution. For example, if I'm going to give
So,
you a
so should we?
multiple,
Okay, here's my question, right?
yeah,
So, should we? So, there's two ways, right? One is that we start like from the education system, or we start from
yeah,
like the university class, which is just like the student, the university students, especially males, they have like so much pressure because they have to
yeah,
get a job, they have to support their parents, they have to
yeah,
support their marriage and all that, and
yeah,
all of this, their intellectual capacity is not they don't have well, I shouldn't say they don't have intellectual capacity, but the intellectual capacity is invested
yeah,
in earning wages.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Or we just have to find
the
people who are like in mid 50s and
mm,
mid
I
40s.
think we should probably focus on parents who uh, are new in the experience. I mean, their kids are very young, um, and they are facing lots of challenges, and we can help them see,
Parents, okay.
yeah. And subsequently, what they can do is to choose a different
It is a very
education.
interesting point you bring up because I think one of the unfortunate or fortunate part of education is that we do not train men to be fathers and husbands, and we do not train women to be mothers and wives, which
Yeah,
is the most critical role that they have to
yeah,
play in their
yeah,
lives.
yeah,
We're just developing them these as you said, like these models of one of the critical aspect of education, at least Islamic education, particularly for mothers is or women, is to be like a mother to nurturing as they say, like a good mother raises a good man. Like
yeah,
Rijal. What was that in
absolutely.
Spain? Like I cannot think of that quote. Okay, it's just skipped my mind. But yeah,
Yeah,
so my point being is like as we're talking about these situations and this education system, especially, well, I'm not even talking about like the Eurocentric postmodernist colonial education system. I'm talking with Islamic systems. They're not being trained to be like
yeah,
husband and wives,
yeah. Husband and wife and fathers and mothers. Yeah,
fathers and
they
mothers.
have, they have, they have absolutely no idea how to fulfill that role, and uh, that can be the starting point, in fact, because uh, when you, as a parent, when you realize that the typical modern schooling system is going to amputate your child, a child who's very gifted, who's very talented, who has lots of gifts, but the system is going to amputate him. It's going to make him a kind of a handicap. It's going
Mhm.
to bring his IQ down. He's going to destroy his EQ very likely, and going to destroy his creative side. Does not going to nurture his moral intuition, etc. Then subsequently, the parents are going to, avoid sending their children to the conventional schools, and eventually they would want to have other venues of education. That they're probably going to homeschool them, and they should have this mechanism or method about how to do that. Because, for example, I'm trying to homeschool right now, and I have absolutely no idea how to do that.
We are
Conceptually, I
not
don't.
trained at home. Absolutely. Like, that's the problem. Like, by the
Yeah,
time we realize that we have to raise children,
yeah,
it's too late.
yeah, yeah, absolutely,
We are not trained
absolutely.
ourselves,
Yeah, it's the kind of it's the kind of we learning by doing, and but by the time you learn, it is too late already, and probably you're going to apply the learning on your grandchildren, very likely.
And not only that, but like the people that you are practicing on, your
Yeah,
children,
absolutely. Your children themselves.
your children themselves, like their impact they're having because they become like these things, the
Yeah,
experimentation
yeah,
in this social and psychological experiment of development,
yeah,
human development.
exactly. So this is something. This is a kind of a disaster that probably very few people are talking about. Salman Asif Siddiqui is probably talking about this. I try to talk a little bit about this, but you will not find lots of people trying to highlight this. This uh, part of the problem. And from an educational perspective, also, I mean, from an educational angle, this is a huge problem because the exposure to the parenting environment is the first step toward learning anything when you are a child. You start learning from there, and subsequently you are sent to a school, and there you are conditioned in a specific manner.
All right. So again, I think we are almost at the end of the time. It's almost like 2 hours since we ever
Yeah,
didn't even realize it. It's almost
yeah.
2 a.m. here.
Oh,
It's
that's great.
that is. I mean, I don't know, like if I will even sleep right now, or I'll just, because Fajr is in
Mm,
2 hours. So if I sleep right now, I may not wake up. But my point being is that I think this is a discussion to be had. But like, as we said, like, we could come up with some kind of frameworks
yeah,
of what to develop and how to develop uh, being human. Education needs to be about being human, and it has becoming this entity that is uh, a construct of a capitalist society where you are just uh, a cog in the big machine,
yeah, yeah. Unfortunately,
unfortunately. So I think we can probably do like a follow up on this to figure out like
yeah,
what may be a better way of solving this. What are your thoughts?
yeah. There was a nice clip I recently saw of some guy. I forgot his name. And he was like, this whole process of nurturing that also include education is like shepherding. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's like you're a farmer, you're a gardener, you have lots of plants. But you cannot decide the ultimate shape of the plant, but you can definitely create this environment.
Mhm.
You create the environment where the plants grow to their full potential, but you cannot precisely design uh, how
The
the
tree.
plant ultimately is going to look like. Or you cannot convert one plant into something else. The plant is only going to, grow as per its potential. So, and unfortunately, in capitalist environment, this is not happening. In the modern education system, you have a very fixed template, and if you have as a student, if you're fitting into that template, the system is going to pass you. If you're not fitting into that template, the system is not going to pass you. So that actually ultimately creates a crisis because lots of people ultimately start losing faith in themselves. They lose confidence in themselves because they are unable to fit into that template. They might have other gifts, they might have other potentials, but the system is not nurturing that, and subsequently they're like, we are no good to the society. We are useless. We are probably not going to be successful in our lives. And subsequently, um, they lose themselves in the process. So it's a tragedy. It's a huge tragedy, and parents need to realize this thing as quickly as possible, so that they don't force their children to go through this uh, dehumanizing process.
I think on the other hand, I mean, I think unless they are prepared for like, and there's a bigger trend here in the European countries and the Western countries of,
Yeah,
doing homeschooling, particularly in like,
yeah,
Muslim families or whatnot, because of all the different
yeah,
curriculum here. Not even Muslims, but like also like some Christian families as well, because they don't want to teach their kids going to the schools and like, um,
yeah,
these mindsets. But, again, then, at some point you have to put them to college,
yeah,
right? To further education. Like, okay, they can do high school at home, but then
yeah,
like you have to put them through college if they want to become doctors, if they want to become engineers and lawyers and whatnot.
yeah,
And at that time, how is that impactful? And on the other
yeah.
side, yeah.
Yeah, what we need to do is to, identify uh, which individual or which child is naturally, capable of, fitting into that environment. If the child is capable of fitting into the environment, you can send the child to the school or to the university and the college. If the child is not capable of fitting into the environment, then subsequently we should not be forcing and destroying the personality of that child.
Hmm.
this unfortunately happens. We lots of parents push, and ultimately they destroy the personality.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think like one of the things is like if somebody like can earn a good income by doing what they love to do, whether even,
Yeah,
whatever that may
yeah,
be, they don't
yeah,
have to be these doctors. They don't have to be, these, I mean, lawyers,
yeah,
which again are part of this construct
yeah,
of this social constructs. Lawyers themselves are like a construct of this
yeah,
colonial legal system, if you will, judicial
yeah,
system, right?
absolutely.
So if you're a tailor, if you like to design clothes, that's a
Yeah,
good skill
absolutely.
to have. And that was like what we used to have, like the skill learning, right? We used to have a
Yeah,
chota who would go to like a
yeah,
stud, and he will
yeah,
spend like 2, 3, 5 years there and learn
yeah,
different everything from the bottom, and
yeah,
eventually he'll become like the stud, and then he'll start his own
yeah,
thing. That was like
yeah.
the
That,
natural. That was the
yeah,
natural path to to the skill
yeah,
learning, and yeah,
yeah, absolutely. But the skills today are so much specialized. If you want to become a scientist, you can definitely learn from a start, but that start exists inside a university, for example. Is a university professor. You have to get into that environment for that purpose. But you're right about this. We still have these studs, but unfortunately, the environment that exists in these small businesses right now is not very good. And these children are often abused in those environments. So that is
mm-hmm.
another area that needs to be fixing. Probably it is because of financial pressures, and there are lots of these stars that themselves into lots of financial stress, and they often vent out their frustration on the kids that are working with them. So ultimately, the environment that is there is not very conducive for. But poor kids are don't have any other option. Then subsequently they are forced to work in these kind of environments. But this concept already exists, and this is
Of
how
course. But my
this.
point being is like as you were mentioning that not everybody has to go to university, right? We can send them to like
Yeah,
trade school.
yeah,
They can become plumbers or electricians
yeah,
or
yeah,
farmers or tailors or
yeah,
barbers, whatever that may be.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
I mean, a scientist is somebody who is just curious, for example. And children are born curious. They have their curiosity is through the roof. If you want them to be scientists, you just have to create that environment where the curiosity does not get suppressed. It is rather. So somebody who is that much curious, then ultimately he can literally become an inventor. If you look at lots of inventors in the past, they did not had any formal education as such. If you talk about Tesla, for example, you talk
that's
about the scholars and historian in the inventors in Muslim history, which university they actually went to, you know. So you
I
can
think
find all kind of inventors and scientists who did not have any university education. They still
and
end up,
this concept of like peer reviewed journals and having this like again
yeah,
like a construct of this thought is again another
yeah. I mean,
you know
this has literally destroyed science. This concept of
absolutely.
publishing into journals, and and there are categories of journals. There are impact factor journals, and there are journals which are lower in category. And the university would rank you according to these numbers. What is your impact factor? For example, how many citations you have, all right, how many papers you have published, all right, and the academia and the scholars in so-called scholars in the universities are literally chasing these numbers right now,
Just
all
like the
right,
students are chasing
and
the numbers to
exactly
get better grades.
the content that is published, how it is relevant for the society is not a question anymore. As long as the paper is published in a high impact factor journal, it fulfills some criteria of rigor, and subsequently you have academics who are literally building their careers around. But some of these academics have mastered this entire process to this extent. They literally publish 100 papers every year. I mean, how the hell it is possible to publish 100 papers in one single year?
But
But
what is
there are
the
people
benefit
who
of
are
that,
doing
right? There's
this.
no
There's,
social benefit.
there is no social benefit. There is no impact they're creating on the society. They've literally created a factory. They have a few assistants, they have a few workers who are working for them, and they literally churn out a paper every 3 day. And AI is now, accelerating this whole process. Right now, probably they'll be able to produce 300 papers in the period of.
I was actually discussing some about AI and PhDs and all of this, right?
Yeah,
And and this was before this AI revolution became, and they
yeah,
were saying like 80% of PhDs in a certain country, and it's a big country, were basically outsourced. Like they would just like go to like other
yeah,
agencies, they will develop
yeah,
their thesis, they will
yeah,
mail them, they
yeah,
will like
yeah,
that's what it has become.
yeah. I mean, it's an industry, right? You don't have to write it. If you have money, you don't have to write your thesis. You can simply hire a consultant who is going to write it for you, and you're done. You just have to prepare for the defense, of course, because that happens. You have to give a presentation in front of some
But they will prepare you for your
district.
defense too.
Right?
That's the
Yeah,
point.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. They're going to help you, you know, uh, uh, memorize a presentation, and you can simply deliver that presentation in front of some experts, and wow, you are now a PhD.
80%, that's a
Yeah,
big number. And
yeah,
as in, like, again, this becomes like a numbers game, and there's no society, like,
yeah. So current academia is unfortunately is a kind of a dead rock. It's a kind of it has completely lost its
w-
spirit.
well, I would not say completely. I mean, you are part of it, or you are an outcome of it,
By
maybe
completely, I would say not a
luck,
significant majority. I
right?
mean, a significant majority. I mean, but I'm not speaking right now in a official formal position with you right now. I mean, I'm not speaking on behalf of my institution.
Of
I'm
course, of
speaking in
course.
a personal capacity.
No, no. What
Uh,
I'm trying to say is that you came out of the education system, so we should not be like totally hopeless. That's what I'm trying to
I
say.
I was probably able
An exception.
to preserve my curiosity because of my antisocial nature. I'm very introverted. I don't interact a lot with lots of people.
Antisocial versus sociopath.
Uh,
Define.
uh, uh, yeah, antisocial is not sociopathic. Antisocial means that there's not you don't socialize with people.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm just teasing. Yeah.
So yeah. So I kind of have this very introverted kind of personality, and probably this is
Mhm.
what did not um, influence me. It does not. It prevented me from taking the influence to that extent. Then I had this tons of questions about how the system actually works, and those questions kind of remain alight for some certain reasons, probably. And yeah, here I am. But you will not. I don't. I haven't found lots of people,
Like
like me,
us,
like me,
like you. Yeah. Yeah.
like you,
Very,
also
very,
think.
very few. You're right. I think again that's another like that's just it's probably just it's not like it is an exception to the case. It's not the case itself. It's like
Yeah,
it
you'll
is an
find a couple of out of 100. You might find one or two, three, maybe five PhD
five.
scholars
Yeah.
as teachers in a university who are thinking on these lines, but not the majority. Most of people are just doing their job and chasing after these numbers and etc.
Right. Okay, Omar bhai, thank you so much for your time.
Sure.
It's always fun talking to you and discussing these new, uh, you know, at least the least we're trying to do, as you said, is trying to provoke that thought and create that awareness that we have
Yeah,
these problems. We need a lot of people to have this kind of thought to be able to make this change. So at least that's the least we are trying to do. So
yeah,
thank you for that, and thank you for being part of that. And
sure.
inshallah, it's a beginning of a journey. And I just wanted to give you like anytime, anything you want to say at the end, anything you want to conclude this discussion with. And then I think we'll have like a follow up. Like today, I think we discussed a lot of problem statements, but we did not synthesize the solution. So I think we will have to